You're watching the Bloomberg Law Bankruptcy Review. I'm Lee Pacchia. I'm joined now by Bill Rochelle, and you might have noticed that we're doing something a little bit different. We're recording at the American Bankruptcy Institute annual spring meeting in Washington, D.C. Just one item to run through, Bill. We have a really interesting case. The Northern Mariana Islands Retirement Fund has filed a Chapter 11 case. It's a pension fund for government workers and retirees. They filed a Chapter 11 case in Saipan. What to make of this?
Well, I tell you, Lee, this is my new most favorite case.
This is an interesting one.
And I think it could end up being not only in an exotic location, but they may also have some exotic issues of law to decide here, as well as some really fascinating business issues. I barely knew where the Marianas was. I had to look it up on the map. It's out in the middle of the Pacific. Probably the last thing you knew about it was that that was where some of the largest battles in World War II were fought. And that was when the U.S. basically acquired the Marianas. It is now a commonwealth of the United States. The folks out on those islands decided not to become independent. They could have been. So they're in that kind of peculiar status where they're not a state. They are a commonwealth associated with the United States. They had this government pension fund, which is very nearly bellied up. If they had continued paying benefits to the workers in the amounts that they're entitled to receive, they would be fresh out of cash in about 2 years.
And we should mention 2,800 government workers, 2,400 retirees, not exactly a small number.
Very large and very important for those islands. And we're not talking about bubkus in terms of assets. Altogether, the fund has about $250 million of assets. So that ain't
not
nothing.
A small case.
I mean, in the real world, unless the islands are to decide to cough up hundreds of millions of dollars to pay these folks in full, fact of the matter is, the beneficiaries are not going to receive as much as they thought. And the question is, how do you come out the other end of Chapter 11? The fund, I gather, is going to attempt to basically negotiate a plan with the retirees where they pay as much as they can to these folks so that there will be no point in time in which they simply run out of money. What I'm thinking, Lee, is that Wall Street is going to descend on this case like a bunch of vultures. And I don't mean that in this instance in a pejorative sense. Because here's the way I'm looking at it. What if a bank or an insurance company goes to the Marianas and says, listen here, I'll take over your assets and I will give life annuities to the people who are entitled to receive benefits. And here is the amount of the annuities that I am willing to pay. I am guessing, Lee, that a major insurance company is going to be able to pay a better annuity to these beneficiaries than this fund can manage to do on its own, and for several reasons. Number one, I suspect that the investment and the managerial expenses will be smaller if this is just a few thousand beneficiaries being handled by a bank that has tens of thousands of people receiving benefits. So they can be more efficient in that sense. Also, if the fund is having to invest on its own, they're going to have to invest in pretty short-term investments. And that, I think, is going to limit what they're going to be able to realize in terms of a return on investments. And it very well may be that an insurance company with a much larger invested portfolio is going to be able to assume a higher return on investments. So I'm kind of guessing that Wall Street is going to be able to do better for these people than they can do on their own. But time will tell.
That is, of course, if the case stays in the system. There's a motion to dismiss by unidentified creditors. Before we assess whether or not this motion has any legs, have you seen that before? Can someone just walk into bankruptcy court and file a motion as John or Jane Doe?
Well, I suppose perhaps in some exaggerated circumstance you could, but here I'm not seeing any reason why, if these people are beneficiaries of the fund, they can't be identified. I don't know, maybe this is such a hot issue that their lives would be in danger, I'm not sure. But in any event, I think the issue is one that really does have to be decided, because these folks have challenged the right to be in Chapter 11, saying that this is not like an ordinary corporation. It is an instrumentality of the Commonwealth government, and because it's part of the government, it's not a person and is not entitled to be in Chapter 11, because governmental units cannot be in bankruptcy reorganization. If that is the case, and I don't frankly know what kind of an animal this is, at that point, they're simply out of luck, because the Marianas are not a state of the United States, and because they're not a state, it's looking to me as though if they can't be in Chapter 11, they cannot be in a Chapter 9 municipal bankruptcy because they're not a state. And in that event, they'll simply be out of bankruptcy court, and I suppose the only thing they could do then is be in a receivership in the Commonwealth courts in the Marianas. You know, at the end of the day, Lee, I think this is a case to follow. I'm hoping maybe Bloomberg will want to send me out to Saipan to observe some of the hearings.
Some on-location research.
But actually, this is going to be a case in which the hearings, largely, if not wholly, are going to be held by teleconference. The case originally was assigned to the one federal district judge who sits in Saipan, but she had to recuse herself because her husband is evidently a beneficiary of the fund. The case was reassigned to Bankruptcy Judge Ferris in Honolulu, and he held the first day hearing by video conference with the participants in the case off in Saipan, and he was in Honolulu. So this is going to be a precedent-setting case in many respects.
That's going to be fascinating. Bill, we're going to stay on top of this one. Thanks for bringing it up, and good luck on your panel later.
Thank you.
That's Bloomberg News bankruptcy columnist Bill Rochelle. If you'd like to learn more about the case and issues we just talked about, be sure to check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube and follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.